are going to teach you Civics, chapter number 4, part 2, that is the Union Executive, part 2 of this chapter, children. So let's go to the video. In this chapter, we are going to see what are the learning objectives we are going to learn from this chapter, children. The role and the powers of the Vice President and the Prime Minister in the governance of the country. So let's see about the Vice President. He is our Honorable Vice President, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu. He is our 13th Vice President of India now. Okay, and the Vice President is the presiding officer or the ex-officio chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. The Vice President officiates as the President in his or his absence. Acts as the President till the newly elected President assumes power. And this is the chairman at the Rajya Sabha and the Rajya Sabha meeting. This is the images of both the chairman and the Rajya Sabha meeting, children. Let's go to the next one, our Prime Minister. Let us learn about our Prime Minister of India. And of course, you are already known very well about his. That means our Honorable Prime Minister of India now, Mr. Narendra Damodar Das Modi, right? And the Prime Minister is a real or the executive of the head of the government of India. And he or she is the leader of the majority party that forms the government at the center. So let's see about the terms of the Prime Minister position. The Prime Minister does not have a fixed tenure. They can retain the position for the full term of the Lok Sabha, and there are no term limits to the office of the Prime Minister. And the powers of the, let's see about the powers of the Prime Minister. What are the powers of the Prime Minister, children? The Prime Minister advises the President on the appointment of the Council of Ministers and assigns the different portfolios, departments like the Defence, Home Affairs, Foreign Affairs and Finance to the various ministers. So the Prime Minister can dismiss and shuffle the portfolios. And the next, the Prime Minister presides over the meetings of the Cabinet and coordinates and supervises the workings of the various departments. He or she takes all the major policy decisions and helps draw up the annual budget. The Prime Minister acts as an advisor to the President of India, and the Prime Minister is a link between the President and the legislature. And the next one is the Prime Minister advises the President on the appointment of the governors, ambassadors, Auditor General, judges and the Chief Election Commissioners, among others. So the Prime Minister advises the President on when to summon, dissolve and prorogue the Parliament. And let's see about the next topic is this agreement between Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Jawaharlal Nehru over the actual powers of the President. This is the oldest images of the Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and Mr. Rajendra Prasad is our first President of India. See, children, soon after independence, the actual powers of the President became a subject of intense debate between the first President of India, Mr. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and the first Prime Minister of India is our Jawaharlal Nehru. And the next one is that Rajendra Prasad too was formally set against the bill and told Nehru he would withhold assent when the bill came to him for approval. So the Rajendra Prasad argued that the Council of Ministers' responsibility was merely to aid and advise the President of India, and that advice was not binding on the President. So disagreement between the Rajendra Prasad and the Nehru over the Hindu Code Bills FYIs. And the matter was referred to the Attorney General M.C. Settleward. M.C. Settleward clarified that the Constitution of India was modelled after the British parliamentary democracy, and that the advice of the Council of Ministers was binding on the President in the exercise of her functions. So India's first Attorney General, who is that our India's first Attorney General, children? Settleward. Okay, Settleward. And Next one is to clarify the position of the president, the 42nd Amendment Act was passed in 1976. So the act was stipulated that there would be a council of ministers led by the prime ministers to aid and advise of the president in the exercise of his or her functions, and it was obligatory for the president to act upon the advice of the council of ministers and the prime minister. And then let's see about the Council of Ministers. Okay, the Prime Minister exercises the executive power with the aid of the Council of Ministers. The President appoints the Council of Ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. To be eligible for the appointment as a minister, a candidate must be a member of either houses of the Parliament. Okay, and let's see, this is a team of Modi G. Now the current cabinet ministers, important cabinet ministers, Mr. Rajnath Singh, Sushma Swaraj, Arun Jaitley, Venkaiah Naidu, Nitin Gadkari, Satyanand Gowda, Uma Bharati, Najma Hepala, like that. A lot of important ministers were there. This is major important ministers. That means the cabinet ministers, and these are all the ministers of the state. That means the independent churches. Okay. So next one, the Council of Ministers is headed by the Prime Minister and consists of the Cabinet Ministers, Ministers of the State and the Deputy Ministers. And one of the most important, he is our Defence Minister of India now, Mr. Rajnath Singh. And she is our Financial Minister of India, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman. And he is the External Affairs Minister of India, S. Jaishankar. Okay, these three persons are the very, very most important persons, ministers in our Indian government, right? That is the Defence Minister, Finance Minister, and the External Affairs. So, who is our Defence Minister? Rajnath Singh. Okay, Finance Minister Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, and External Affairs Mr. S. Jaishankar. So the cabinet ministers are the senior ministers in the independent charges of the most important ministers like the defense, finance, external affairs, among others. So the body formed by the cabinet ministers is called the cabinet. It is the most important body in the government. Okay, and the Prime Minister works in close collaboration with the cabinet ministers in arriving at important decisions. The ministers of states and the deputy ministers assist the cabinet ministers in discharging their functions. So let's see about the collective responsibility. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to the legislature. This implies that if they lost the confidence of the Lok Sabha, a vote of no confidence is passed against them. It is passed with a simple majority. The Council of Ministers along with the Prime Minister has to resign. So that's all. These are all the topics covered. We just learned. Let's recap all the topics. The powers of the president. These two topics we learned from the beginning of this chapter. That means the part 1 of this chapter. And the vice president and the prime minister, term, powers of the prime minister, disagreement between the Dr. Rajendra Prasad and the Jawaharlal Nehru over the actual powers of the president and the council of ministers and the collective responsibility. So these are all the covers we covered in this chapter, children. Hope you all understand well. We will meet in another next chapter video. Thank you all, children. Thank you.